So hello there, and welcome back to another Night of the Movies video. I'm of course Spy the Jedi Knight, and in these videos I love talking about things, movies and TV, and whatever I want, whenever I want. And in today's video, I'm continuing on with my Star Wars reviews in the lead up to the release of The Mandalorian and Grogu, the first Star Wars movie we're getting in 7 years, which is coming out this year, as I review The Mandalorian Season 2. So let's get into it, shall we? The Mandalorian Season 2 is, of course, you guessed it, the follow-up to The Mandalorian Season 1. And The Mandalorian Season 1 came out in March of 2020 in the UK. And The Mandalorian Season 2 also came out in the same year in the UK. Came out in October of 2020. That's when it started airing. And so we were quite lucky in the UK. I don't think this happened everywhere else in the world, because I think everywhere else in the world they got The Mandalorian Season 1 in November of 2019. But in the UK, we were quite lucky as we got the first two seasons of The Mandalorian in the same year. So there's that. Anyway, I remember when Season 2 of The Mandalorian, when this season was coming out. And I'll be honest, and if I'm not being, then what's the point of me doing these videos? I wasn't looking forward to Season 2 that much. And it's not because I didn't enjoy Season 1. No, quite the opposite actually. I loved Season 1. Loved it. It wasn't my favourite, it isn't my favourite piece of Disney Star Wars, but I loved Season 1. So, you might be questioning, why weren't you looking forward to Season 2? Well, I think it was because I was expecting there to be a dip in quality. I'm not sure why I was expecting that, and maybe I was just overly pessimistic at the time, but yeah, I was not expecting much from Season 2. Even so, I thought the trailers looked great. Yeah, I don't know. Season 2, I wasn't anticipating it quite as much as I do nowadays with a new piece of Star Wars media, you know? But I was still interested in seeing it nonetheless, because, as you might have guessed, I'm a huge Star Wars man, you know? I'm a huge Star Wars fan, as you probably guessed from the thumbnail to this video today, from the fact that I'm wearing a Mandalorian t-shirt, or the fact that I have all this Star Wars merchandise behind me. I mean, yes, I am a huge Star Wars fan. It's shaped so much of my life in more ways than I probably care to admit, and yes, I am a huge Star Wars fan, so that's why I was looking forward to Season 2. But again, I wouldn't say I was particularly excited about it before it came out. And then I remember when the season started airing, when Mandalorian Season 2 began airing in October of 2020, and I watched the first episode, Season 2, Episode 1. And I was shocked by it. Genuinely shocked by how much I enjoyed that first episode, by how much it worked to me, by how much I was actually kind of just locked in to what was going on throughout the entire episode. If you can't remember, it's the episode where basically the Mandalorian meets Cod Vanth, played by Timothy Olyphant, and they help save this town from these giant worms. It's very Dune inspired, But what I really liked about that episode, I mean, by the way, the whole of Star Wars is Dune inspired. That's not a secret there. George Lucas has said that openly in the past, but that's another topic for another day. Anyway, going back onto The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 1, the great thing about that episode, in my opinion, is that it feels like a movie. It feels like a Star Wars Disney Plus movie. And I remember watching the episode thinking, God, if the rest of the season is like this, or even better, we are in for a real treat with The Mandalorian Season 2. And you know what? We were. I loved The Mandalorian Season 2 when it came out in the later months of October of 2020. And surprise, surprise, I still absolutely love it. I think this season is bigger, bolder, and you know what? Ultimately better than Season 1. And I still think it's the best season of The Mandalorian. And I should also say here, I'm not going to get into my opinion on Season 3 too much, because firstly, I want to save that for my review of Season 3, which I'll be doing in the forthcoming weeks to months on this channel, but also because I haven't watched Season 3 since it first came out. But I remember Season 3, I actually enjoyed, although I thought it had a lot of downs at the same time. I thought it had a lot of problems with it too. But Season 2, again, I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not saying that every episode fires on all cylinders, and I'm not saying there aren't some weaknesses throughout this season, because I do think that is the case. I don't think each season of The Mandalorian is quite reaches the heights that it perhaps could have, but this gets the closest to doing so. This season of The Mandalorian gets the closest to reaching the heights that the show could have. The show could do. It gets the closest to reaching those heights. And the reason it does, and there's many reasons it does so actually, there are many, many reasons it does so. I mean, firstly, I think this is the season of The Mandalorian where it really feels like The Mandalorian as a whole, as a TV show, finds its footing. Not to say season 1 didn't, but season 1 walked, you know what I mean? Season 1 walked so this season could run. And when this season runs, when it gets cooking with gas, I mean, honestly, it's some of the most enjoyable Star Wars I've seen come out of the Disney Star Wars era. In fact, to be honest, it's probably some of the most enjoyable Star Wars that I've seen come out since, well, since the original trilogy. I do think The Mandalorian Season 2 is better than a lot of the prequel trilogy, which might be an unpopular opinion, but I don't care, it's my opinion. Yeah, there's so much of this season where it screams Star Wars to me, whether it's in the epic space battles, the well choreographed and well shot action sequences, all the planets that we explore, the expanding on the Star Wars galaxy, which is something people complain about way too much nowadays. People, Star Wars fans in particular, complain about. They say, oh, the Star Wars galaxy feels too small nowadays. Disney have made it feel too small because we're always going back to Tatooine, and we go back to Tatooine once again in this season of The Mandalorian, but you still expand on the Star Wars galaxy at the same time. You still explore new areas, new worlds, new parts of the galaxy that you haven't seen before, and in doing so, everything just feels grander, you know what I mean? It feels more epic in scale. This is what I mean when I say this is a bigger and more bolder season of The Mandalorian than the first season, because we're going places in the galaxy, literally, that we hadn't been to up to this point in the Star Wars franchise. But also, what I mean when I say bolder is also in the writing. When you get these great dark moments in the season, for instance, when you see Bill Burr's character in the second to last episode, I think the episode's called The Believer, if I'm correct. Yes, according to Google, I am correct. Yes, in the second to last episode of the season, which is my favourite episode of The Mandalorian overall, in the second to last episode, we see this scene between Bill Burr's character, who used to work for the Empire, and an Imperial officer. And that scene alone, I mean, it's so well written. And it's dark at the same time. This season goes to places that I didn't think The Mandalorian could do, and to be honest, hasn't since this season, at least as far as I remember. I don't think Season 3 was too dark, but this season is dark, and it has the Empire in a much more bigger role than Season 1. And I think it's better for doing so, because also, I think it's better in doing that. I think it's better having the Empire in a much bigger role, because also in the season, you see the effect that the Empire ruling over the galaxy had on everyone. Because obviously, if you don't know already, and I'd be surprised if you didn't know and you're watching up to this point in this review, The Mandalorian is set after the events of Return of the Jedi. So the Empire have largely been defeated, but there's still a bit of Empire out there, as we saw in The Mandalorian Season 1. And in Season 2, we see that there's even more Empire still out there. We see that they still have a huge hold in the galaxy, actually. A much bigger role, a much bigger hold in the galaxy than you perhaps would like to think they do. And what I really like in this season is how you see how you see the effect that the Empire had on the galaxy, the effect that the Empire had on these characters we've been following. Like Cara Dune, who's a character I've never really latched onto. I forgot that she actually gets quite a bit of development in the season. We learn more about her. We learn that actually she used to live an old one, and of course we see the older one blow up in A New Hope quite famously, and we learn that she lost her home because of the Empire, and we learn how much she hates the Empire. And it's things like that which just make this a more engrossing viewing experience of a season. You know what I mean? It makes it it makes this season of The Mandalorian more of a sort of season of TV that you can really get your teeth into, that you can really enjoy, because it's going into areas you've always kind of wanted explored in Star Wars media, and it's doing things that you've always kind of wanted to see in Star Wars media at the same time. For instance, you get to see Boba Fett in all of his glory in, I want to say, episode 7 Oh no, it's episode 6, sorry. What's it called? The Tragedy? Yes, I got it correct there. Let's get the names of the episodes of The Mandalorian correct. Yes, you get to see Boba Fett in all of his glory in episode 6 when he gets his armor back and he's knocking out all those stormtroopers and shooting them in every which way he wants, and it's just brilliant. I remember when that episode came out initially and I had the biggest grin on my face because I'm a huge Boba Fett fan. I got a big Boba Fett Funko Pop over there. I've actually got the helmet that Boba Fett wears in The Mandalorian over there. I'm not showing it in today's video. I'm going to have that probably on the thumbnail of my review of the Book of Boba Fett, which are going to come in the next couple of weeks to months on this channel. But the way Boba Fett is used in this season of The Mandalorian made me fall in love with that character all over again. I mean, I always thought it was a cool character. You know, I always thought it was a cool character. I've got loads of Boba Fett figures back there, but the way he's used in the season, man alive. I remember when that first episode aired, God, I wanted to stand up and cheer, go, yeah, that's the sort of character that I want to watch, you know. And I think he's great as a supporting character in the season. He doesn't say much, but whenever he's on screen, I'm like, yep, that's a Boba Fett. That's the Boba Fett I've always wanted. And I love the fact as well that he's played by Temuera Morrison, who of course played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones. And although I'm not a fan of Attack of the Clones, it's probably my least favourite Star Wars movie, then again, Solo exists. Even so I'm not a fan of Attack of the Clones, I do think Jango Fett is the best part of that film, and I like that Temuera Morrison got to come back and essentially play his son, you know, in this season. Yes, I thought the way they used Boba Fett was wonderful and glorious, you know, and the way you want it to be. And you also get to see Luke Skywalker in this season. Now, Luke Skywalker, there's something kind of off with his face when he shows up in this season, but God, the feeling I had that the first time that happened, you know, was so unexpected. I did not expect Luke to show up at all, and then he did, and that episode came like a week before Christmas in October, and it felt like an early Christmas present. God, it was just wonderful that. You know, I remember running around the garden like 3 times after seeing that moment in the episode because of how much I love Luke Skywalker. And even so, when I rewatched the episode today, actually, before doing this review, even so I knew that moment was coming. It's people talk about it to death in their own YouTube videos. It still works. I think it's still a great piece of, I think it still works narratively, and that's the thing that matters the most. You get all these nods and these callbacks to things we see in the Star Wars galaxy before in this season, like Luke Skywalker showing up, but they all work because they fit in with the narrative in season 2 and season 1 as a whole. Actually, they fit with the narrative of The Mandalorian, and so it doesn't feel like the filmmakers behind the show just going, you know, hear the keys, hear the jingling the keys in front of you, trying to get you to like it. No, everything works well because the main plot of this season of The Mandalorian is getting Baby Yoda, aka the child, aka Grogu, although he's actually called Grogu in this season. This is where he gets his name. I forgot that, by the way. I thought it was season 3 where he got his name, but actually, no, it was season 2. It's Ashoka who tells the Mandalorian that Baby Yoda, aka the child, is called Grogu. But one of the main, like I said, one of the main plots, but like I was saying, one of the main plots of this season is that Grogu has to get to his people. He has to find the Jedi. And so when you see Luke show up at the end of the season, it's like, makes perfect sense, you know? It doesn't feel just like fan service. It doesn't feel like we're just doing this for the sake of trying to get fans to like our show. No, actually, it works well, but it's also great fan service at the same time. And I like that sort of stuff in Star Wars. I know people complain about it, you know, each their own, but I like fan service when it works with the narrative in Star Wars, in any piece of Star Wars media, whether it's film, whether it's a Star Wars movie or a Star Wars TV show. And I do think Luke Skywalker showing up at the end of this season of The Mandalorian works narratively well. I also love the fact that Mark Hamill played him again. You know, he is credited on the last episode, so that's cool as well that they got Mark Hamill to come back. Although, you know, Sebastian Stan is right there. I don't understand why they just don't cast Sebastian Stan as Luke Skywalker. He's already in the Disney machine because he plays Winter Soldier in the MCU. So get him to play young Luke Skywalker. It's really not that difficult. You can just get him from one set to the next set and give him a load more money. I think he'll be fine with it. I think he even said he's up for doing it. Anyway, yes. Still, I think that the return of Luke Skywalker is great in this season, and much like season 1, there's a lot to like in there with the familiarity mixed in with the originality, the new mixed in with the different, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Oh no, sorry, the old mixed in with the new. That's what I was trying to say. The old mixed in with the new. You've got all this stuff which reminds you of classic Star Wars in there, like the Empire, like, well, yeah, that's a big example, is it? Like seeing Boba Fett's starship back, what's it called, Slave One, like seeing all these elements back that we remember from classic Star Wars movies, but you also have new elements thrown in there. It's got that perfect balance. You have things like the Ice Spider in there. And by the way, I don't care what anybody says, I think that Ice Spider episode, which I think is episode 2 in this season, is great. Sure, it's a filler episode. I'm not going to say it's not. It is a filler episode. But that, in my opinion, is how you do a filler episode. Oh my god, the suspense I felt rewatching that episode. Even so, I knew that the Mandalorian and Grogu and the person there, or the creature, should I say, that they are travelling with, get out of that whole spider situation. Rewatching it again, I was like, oh, this is properly entertaining, you know what I mean? I think Peyton Reed did a really great job directing the episode. He also directed the last episode of this season, and that's another thing with this season. The directors all did a great job. I didn't really talk about the directors in the first season, in regards to the first season of The Mandalorian, but I thought the first season of The Mandalorian overall was a really well directed season. Some episodes stood out more than others because they were directed by different directors, and you get that with this season as well. But the great thing about this season, in my opinion, is every director is working at the best of their ability. You can clearly tell that every director who has come in with The Mandalorian Season 2 is a fan of Star Wars, loves this franchise. You can tell that straight away. You can tell that they are pouring every ounce of love into the episodes they're directing. Jon Favreau, who is directing the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, coming out in late May of this year, you know, he directed the first episode. You can tell he's a huge, huge Star Wars fan. You know, watching that episode. Oh my god, he's a Star Wars fan, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he's doing. I look forward to see what he's going to do with the Mandalorian and Grogu. But then you also, the second episode is directed by Peyton Reed. The second and last episodes are both directed by Peyton Reed. He directed 2 episodes. Again, you can tell that he's always wanted to direct a Star Wars TV show like this. The way he directs, it's like a kid playing with Star Wars toys, you know what I mean? Episode 3 was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, who is the son of Ron Howard, by the way, who directed Solo, although that's not his best piece of work. Ron Howard is a very accomplished director himself. He's directed stuff like Apollo 13, why I'm forgetting, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is like a Christmas classic for people. His best movie, in my opinion, is Rush. Yeah, he's a great accomplished director, and his daughter is Bryce Dallas Howard, who's an actor herself. She was in the Jurassic World movies, and she was also in a Black Mirror episode. Anyway, yeah, she directed one of the episodes, and she directed one of the episodes in season 1 actually as well. Anyway, she did a really great job with the episode she directed in this season, because it feels like she really is more confident in herself as a filmmaker in the Star Wars franchise. You know, watching her episode, I can see why people say they want to see a Bryce Dallas Howard directed Star Wars movie. I'm on board for that if it happens. I think there's a chance it will. But yes, I think she did a great job. And then you have Dave Filoni, you know, he's one of the main guys behind The Mandalorian, and he's one of the main guys behind a lot of the animated Star Wars stuff. He directed the episode where Ahsoka comes back. That is a wonderful episode, and I've never been a big fan of Ahsoka. I never was before watching this season of The Mandalorian, you know? I'm not somebody who liked Clone Wars. I tried watching the Clone Wars TV show, wasn't for me, and I never watched Star Wars Rebels either, because I can't deal with that sort of animation. But even I like Ahsoka in this season, which is saying a lot, you know? I think she's great. I think she's awesome in that episode when she comes back. And yeah, it's really well done by Dave Filoni. I loved how that episode took its time. You know, there's quite a few moments in the episode I was thinking, this actually feels a bit slow. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, though. I'm saying that in a way like I really like how atmospheric and how you're building on everything going on in the scene. I love how it's not speeding up for the sake of it, you know what I mean? So yeah, I thought Dave Filoni did a great job directing an episode. Who else directed an episode? Rick Famuyiwa, he directed the second to last episode, which is my favourite episode of the Mandalorian TV show as a whole. The episode where they have to break into the Empire base, and the Mandalorian ends up taking off his helmet. You know, that whole episode, and the great scene with Bill Burr and that Imperial officer. Oh my god, it's so enjoyable to watch. It's got a bit of Indiana Jones in there, you know? And I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan as well, another Lucasfilm property. So, yeah, that episode has a bit of everything for me in there. Point is, I think all the directors did a great job directing episodes of this season of The Mandalorian. And also Carl Weathers, how could I forget? Carl Weathers himself, the late great Carl Weathers, he directed an episode of this season. The only episode he actually stars in. Which is it's a filler episode as well. Yeah, it is a filler episode, but it's also really entertaining to watch. And that's the thing. I don't mind so much that there are episodes that are kind of filler in this season. That episodes that don't really go anywhere with the plot straight away. You know what I mean? I don't mind that so much because they're actually so entertaining at the same time. And that's the thing about this season of The Mandalorian. It doesn't forget to be entertaining at the end of the day. It doesn't forget to be properly entertaining at that. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say this season of The Mandalorian is without criticism, in my opinion, because it is. I do have some criticisms of it. For instance, I don't think the musical score by Ludwig Göransson is quite as strong as his score for the first season. It's still got some great themes in there. I think the theme for Boba Fett in this season, it goes like dum 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 dum. Great piece of music in my opinion, perfectly summed to the character. I love that theme, but I'm kind of struggling to think of other new themes that he came up with this season. I bet he did come up with a lot of new themes, by the way. I really like Ludwig Göransson as a film composer, and I think he's going to win another Oscar in a couple of weeks' time, or whenever the Oscars is. I actually can't remember, but you get what I'm saying. However, I just think his score for season 2 could have been better, and I'm not surprised that he stopped scoring the show when it came to season 3, because I wonder if maybe just actually saying that he's probably just busy, wasn't he? But maybe he just ran out of new themes, and maybe he just didn't have that same love for what he did for season 1. But he still did a really good score. I just don't think it's quite as good as it was for season 1. You know what I mean? I think it's good, just not very good, like his score was for season 1. And I also would like to know a bit more about Moff Gideon in the season, Giancarlo Esposito's character, particularly because I have just not too long ago watched Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul for the first time, and Giancarlo Esposito is a big character, plays a very big character in both of those shows. What's his name? Gus. How could I forget? Yeah, he plays a very, very big character in both of those shows. And he's kind of playing the same character in this show, actually. I mean, not exactly the same character. He's much, there's a big difference, actually, between the character he plays in The Mandalorian and the character he plays in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. But still, it's the same. He plays in the same sort of way, and I would have liked to see a lot more of Giancarlo Esposito. And I also would like to learn a lot more about the character, because, again, you see how much the Empire has destroyed the galaxy, and how much it's destroyed people's mental health in this season of The Mandalorian. I would have liked to kind of see the opposite perspective on that, on Moff Gideon. Maybe we could have had a whole episode in the season focused all around Moff Gideon, the sort of character he is. That could have been really interesting, and why he supports the Empire, why he wants the Empire to grow after the second Death Star was destroyed at the end of Return of the Jedi. I would have liked to see that, and we don't really get that. And so, yeah, I do think they kind of wasted Moff Gideon's potential in this season when they could have done a lot more with him. And I'll talk about that more in detail in season 3, because I kind of forgot that he came back in season 3 until I was talking about him just then. Anyway, but I'll talk about it in more detail when I get to season 3. And there were other parts of the season where I'm thinking, this could have been better. But the thing is, I don't really care, because I had a blast rewatching this season of The Mandalorian. I had a better time rewatching this season of The Mandalorian than I did watching season 1. Than I did rewatching season 1, should I say. And I loved rewatching season 1, don't get me wrong. But I loved even more rewatching season 2. And one of the things I was really impressed by with season 2 is how it looked. And I don't know if this is the case, but it looked like they shot more on location and less with the volume. Now, it still looks like they shot a lot with the volume, and by the way, if you don't know, the volume, I'm not literally talking about, when you turn up your remote, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this sort of, and I'm going to oversimplify here, but this sort of interactive set that they used on the set of The Mandalorian. They also used it on the set of Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan and other non-Star Wars related shows like House of the Dragon, and they used it on the set of the Batman movie as well. They've used it for quite a few films now too. But I think it originated on the set of The Mandalorian, if I'm not mistaken. And with the first season, you can kind of tell when the volume is used. You can kind of tell when this, I haven't really explained what it is either. You know, it's this sort of interactive virtual reality set where the actors, it's sort of like a big screen behind the actors. It's hard to explain, but it basically makes the world that the actors are meant to be in look more real to them. I think that's what it kind of is, and they use it as well because it makes it easier for the filmmakers and not constantly focusing on using green screens and blue screens like they were for the prequels. Instead, for this, they use the volume, which is a great, innovative piece of filmmaking, you know, not just television filmmaking, but also filmmaking as a whole. And in season 1, to me, it was a little obvious at times when the volume was used. And it was a little obvious as well in this season 2, but also it wasn't quite as obvious as it was when it was used in the season 1. You know, in season 2, when the volume set is used, they use it in a way which is almost seamless, and they also try and blend it in with real location shooting. I was surprised by how much of the time it looked like they shot on location. Like the episode The Tragedy, directed by Robert Rodriguez, another great director who came to do this season. You know, another great director himself in his own right, who came in to direct a banger of an episode of this season of The Mandalorian where, you know, Boba Fett gets his armor back and he's knocking out the stormtroopers. Such an enjoyable piece of Star Wars television. Anyway, that episode looked like it was shot on location. Disappointment making. And there were parts of the season as well which still look like they shot on the volume, but it kind of works in the show's favour. And I think they became more confident with how they shoot on the volume when it came to the season. It didn't get in my head so much that I was watching things that were shot on the volume. And sometimes it's happened with Star Wars TV shows. It happened a bit with me and the Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show, which I'll probably talk about in the forthcoming weeks, which I'll probably re-review in the forthcoming weeks to months on this channel. But it didn't happen so much with this season of The Mandalorian. I was watching a lot of it thinking, was this actually shot on the volume, or were they using real sets, or were they actually shooting on location? And I mean that in a good way. You know, I love when Star Wars shoots on location because you can kind of go and visit. Because I love the idea that you can go and visit a place in the Star Wars galaxy yourself. I love that whole idea, and it looked like they shot on location in quite a few parts of this season, and I think that's more effective. But also they used the volume sets, and I think they use them also effectively as well. So yes, I think that also makes it feel more grander, more bigger. You know, the fact that they shot on location, or the fact that I think they shot on location, should I say, and the fact that they're using the volume in more intricate ways, in more complex and more understanding ways. And this season overall, like I said, I just think it as a whole feels more epic and more exciting than season 1. I think, like I said, the show really found its footing with this season. And you have all these returning characters. You have a bunch of returning characters coming back in there as well. Like Bill Burr comes in this season of The Mandalorian, and I didn't really like him in the one episode he was in season 1 of The Mandalorian. But he's so much better in this season, in my opinion. So much better. I love that character when he comes back in this season, and I love how they use Boba Fett. I'm not a fan of Ashoka. Never really been a huge fan of Ashoka, but I love the way she's used in this season. She's only really in one episode, but still, great episode. And I love all the new characters from me in this season. I love the characters that were in the first season that were developed in this season too. And there's so much about this season of The Mandalorian which I absolutely love. And I just think it's a blast to watch overall. It really is. It's the best season of The Mandalorian because, you know, it's so enjoyable. And at the end of the day, that's what you kind of want from a Star Wars TV show like this. This is why The Mandalorian Season 2 works as the best season of Mandalorian, because it understands the sort of show it is, and it fires on all cylinders being that sort of show. It blends and balances the originality with the familiarity in the Star Wars galaxy, and does so in a way that is so engrossing to Star Wars fans. You know, I discussed that at length in my view of recent review of The Mandalorian Season 1, and I felt that even more so this season. The balancing of the familiarity, the stuff we've seen in the Star Wars galaxy before, with the originality, the stuff we haven't seen in the Star Wars galaxy before. And again, it's all just, it makes for, Star Wars TV show that as a Star Wars fan, I just don't think you can't help but enjoy. You know what I mean? I just think you can't help but enjoy this season of The Mandalorian. I love The Mandalorian Season 2. I think it's the best season of The Mandalorian. I think it's bigger, bolder, more epic and confident. It's got a bit of everything you want in there as a Star Wars fan, as a classic Star Wars fan, and also perhaps as a new fan of this franchise. There's a lot in there for you to enjoy. And yeah. Also, one more thing I really like. It is an episodic show, and it feels episodic. It doesn't feel like it needs to be a movie. So many times you get TV shows nowadays that are like 6 or 8 episodes long, and each episode is less than an hour, and they feel like it was originally conceived as a movie, and then they cut it down to make it into a TV show for various reasons. But that does not feel like the case with The Mandalorian Season 2, and I mean that in the best way possible. I love it, and so all in all, I'm going to say that The Mandalorian Season 2, I'm going to say that it's a 9. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to give it. I'm going to say it's a 9.5 out of 10. By the way, this usually turns on, but I think the battery's out. So, still, you get the point. I have a lightsaber like this, which is kind of cool, and I wanted to show it off for today's video a little bit. But anyway, why I'm giving it a 9.5 out of 10 quickly, I don't think it quite reaches the height of Star Wars' best TV show, in my opinion, which is the Andor TV show. Both seasons of Andor, I do think, are better than The Mandalorian. But also Andor's a very different kind of show. You know, I've spoken about this at length in the past. Andor's a very different kind of show, and in my opinion, The Mandalorian Season 2 works perfectly, almost perfectly, should I say, for the sort of show it is. You know, the more I talk about it, the more I think about it, and the more I review this season of The Mandalorian on today's video, the more I realise, yes, this is what you really want from a season of Mandalorian. You really want the whole balance to be there between the originality and the familiarity. Yeah. You know, you want there to be that balance between the new stuff and the old stuff. You want there to be all the big epic action sequences in space, and you want there to be all these cool character moments. This season of Mandalorian, in my opinion, is exactly the sort of season you would expect, exactly the sort of TV you expect from a season of The Mandalorian, if you follow my thinking. I'm not sure how much making sense, because we talked for quite a bit now, and feeling a bit tired as well, but point I'm making is, this season of The Mandalorian is exactly what you want from a season of The Mandalorian. At least it is, in my opinion. It's got a bit of everything in there, you know? It's got a bit of everything in there, and each episode stands out in its own way. And this season of The Mandalorian just gets better and better the more it goes on. It starts off strong, and you know what? It ends even stronger with, in my opinion, the last 3 episodes of this season of The Mandalorian are 3 of the best episodes of The Mandalorian as a whole, and perhaps 3 of the best episodes of all the Star Wars Disney Plus TV shows as a whole, with the exception of the Andor TV show. You know, the last 3 episodes of The Mandalorian Season 2 are, yeah, pretty much everything you want from this show as a whole, and this season is also kind of gives you everything you want as well. Yes, The Mandalorian Season 2 is exactly what you want from The Mandalorian show. It's the point I'm making. I love it. Love it to pieces. And it's still, in my opinion, the best season of The Mandalorian, which is why I'm going to say once more that The Mandalorian Season 2 is a 9.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway, guys, that is it for today's podcast. Not a podcast, is it? Don't do podcasts anymore. No, sorry, that's it for today's video. If you have seen The Mandalorian Season 2, then please let me know your thoughts on it in the comment section below. And if you haven't yet and you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe down below, and look forward to many more videos coming like this very, very soon on this channel. As I've already said, thank you for watching today's video, and I will see you guys again soon. But bye for now. Bye.